Carol Mahoney, and I'm the founder of Unbound Growth, and welcome to the virtual Q&A session for the Sales Growth Summit. I am super excited to be here, and I'm joined by...
I'm Lori Richardson, President of Women's Sales Pros, and CEO of Score More Sales. Thank you all so much for joining us at the Sales Growth Summit live Q&A session. We're excited to be here with many of our speakers from today.
Awesome. I can't believe, Lori, we had over 470 questions that were sent in. Oh my gosh. And of course, we can't handle them all. So we did see some trends and questions that got asked a lot. And I spent a good part of Saturday and Lori and I yesterday, even though it was football Sunday, just sort through them all. Thankfully, I had lots of help, but not from my husband. Because I asked him some of these questions like, honey, what's the best way to get over rejection, when he asked me what I was doing? And he said, drink. But unlike advice from my husband, we have sales experts here who have worked with hundreds of companies and faced many of the challenges and questions that everyone sent in.
Yes, and Carol, from those 470 questions, we whittled it down to 10 that our speakers will answer in quick, actionable, 2-minute answers. We'll wrap up in a lightning round question that each speaker will answer in 30 seconds. So it should be fun. Speakers, are you all up for this?
Oh, yeah. They're all nodding their heads emphatically. Yes. All right, so let's say hello to our live speakers. We have several people here today, and I'm so excited that you could all join us. And we have, starting with, and I think Sherry Leverton was going to join us, but we also have Amy Franco. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I really appreciated all of the steps that you shared today about aligning to your buyer. And I'm so glad that you were able to join us today, too, because this is such a commitment and wealth of knowledge that we have here. And there is the Alice Hyman, who is a wealth of knowledge and experience and our in-house trade show expert. Hi, Alice. You ladies can
Hello, everybody.
Hi. All right, and we have Gretchen Gordon and we have Misha McPherson. Both of you were on the hiring and onboarding sessions today. Thank you so much for being here. Say a quick hi.
Hi, thank you.
And
hello.
I know. Hi.
You all.
And Lisa Magnuson, I see you over there on the coaching panel today. I was like nodding my head as you guys were talking about this, because coaching is near and dear to my heart. So thank you for sharing and for being here.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Let's see. Of course, there is Lauren Bailey and the Lori Richardson. What a panel on culture that you guys had today. Another very hot topic.
Yeah, we could have talked for hours. Right, Lauren?
Exactly. There's Lauren. Hi, Lauren. All right, so let's start digging in. Lori, you want to take it away with our first question that we sorted through?
I have a question for Alice Hyman. Alice, this was from attendee Valerie. And Valerie's question was, what is the best way to identify conferences, events to target your potential client population and engage those potential clients while exhibiting?
Yes, so when you're choosing if you've never been to any events before, it's best to ask other companies who sell to your same audience, where do they go to find that audience? So if you're just starting out, don't have any idea, you can definitely ask other companies who sell to the same audience. You can also ask your own customers where they go. So let's say you're selling to companies in the medical area, maybe they're selling medical devices. You can ask 3 or 4 of those companies, which shows do you go to? Now, I always recommend that you walk a show the first time before you put money out there to exhibit or sponsor. So when you get the information about, shows, build your list of all these shows. You can also just Google and say list of shows for MedTech, and a bunch of them pop up. So when you've got your list built, maybe you're going to pick a few based on location, based on who attends, and all that information. When you hit the show website, the demographics of the people who attend it's always there. Then the first time you're going to go, you're going to walk. You're not going to spend money because you're not ready to do that yet. You don't even know if the right people are there. So before we spend the money. Now, if you've been doing this for years, then you may want to do it a different way. You may want to take a look at all the trade shows you've done and rate them in some way, what kind of return on investment they've given you, and then pare it back down and then look for some new ones.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alice. And we did have a quick question too from Pablo. And I wonder, Alice, if in like 30 seconds you have, if you could answer, in relation to trade shows, how important do you think things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator and those types of things are?
Extremely important, because the key to success at any trade show event, whether you're sponsoring and exhibiting, is the work you do ahead of time. And so those tools can help you find the right people who are going to be at the show and could potentially buy from you, and help you start to get in their path ahead of time and build a relationship with them before you see them at the show, which will make the show so much more successful for you.
Yeah, awesome points. Thank you, Alice. So, Amy, this is a question for you that was sent in from Bruce. And he asked, if I can summarize his question, why is it that salespeople are so eager to talk about themselves and their product and their service and go into demo mode rather than actively listening?
Oh, I've never done that. No.
None of us have, right?
No, I've never fallen into that trap. There are probably, as I was kind of thinking through this question, there are probably, I'd say, 4 things that we tend to fall into, or I have fallen into. I would say the first, and this probably feels like basic blocking and tackling, but not having an agenda going into the meeting. Even if it's 3 bullet points that you send to the prospect or the client that says, hey, here are the things I'd like to cover in our conversation, even if, especially if it's a net new prospect that you've never talked with before, that shows them that you want to talk about what's going on with them, what you're seeing in their industry, and you're not, it'll reduce your odds of going into pitch mode out of the gate. So that's probably the first thing. And then along with an agenda, making sure to have questions prepped and getting that background intelligence. So in my session, I talked about the 5 categories of gathering intelligence, and they range from industry knowledge to organizational challenges, fiscal year goals, vision, etc. Organizing some questions around those categories can help you go into the conversation with feeling more comfortable, confident, and being able to direct the conversation in the place that you want to direct it. But sometimes we just get asked flat out, if you've ever been in a conversation, can you tell me about your products and services? Mm-hmm. And so now you're in a spot where, okay, they've asked you a direct question, and to be ready for that question. So you're not going to, you don't want to ignore it. You might give it just a very high level of the types of clients you work with, the types of products and services that you have, or maybe the industries that you cover. But know that you're going to have to redirect that, and something like, we can get into those types of conversations down the road where I hear a little bit, after I learn a little bit more about you, so that you can kind of improv and pivot that conversation back to where you want it to go. So you're not 50 minutes into an hour-long conversation and you've spent all of it talking about yourself or your services. And then I'd say the last thing is, sometimes we fall into the trap of we feel the need to fill space by talking. And so rather than allowing space for thought, taking notes, asking questions, we sometimes just want to fill the space. And just being aware of that,
awesome.
If that's something you tend to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. And
yeah.
I will share one last quick thing with that, because it just occurs to me. And a lot of times what I say in coaching, if you've ever watched Seinfeld and The Summer of George, where you do the exact opposite of your natural inclination until you get used to it, that's one way to stop the rambling in demo mode, I think.
Oh, there you go.
Less is more.
Yes, exactly.
That's great. So I'm going to ask Lisa Magnuson. We have a question for you. You had a great session today. Mike is asking this question. Mike wants to know, what is your best tip for selling to large account buyers? If the first step is to ID accounts, what criteria is important to include?
Great question coming from Mike. And one of the things, when you're identifying your largest prospects, I definitely recommend scoring those prospects, as Mike alludes to. And, the criteria is really what's important for your company. So I also really recommend that you develop your custom criteria. But kind of an example of some criteria that makes sense to a lot of companies is obviously what is the financial value. Most everybody kind of uses that as their number one, but then going deeper than that, how would you score them on fit? How would you score them on their strategic value? An example of strategic value might be a geography that you want to get into, or an industry that you're looking to get into, or maybe you want to land a banner account that you can reference. Those would all be examples of strategic value. Then you also want to look at access. So, do you have access to those stakeholders that are going to make a decision in your favor? The number of stakeholders involved in an enterprise transaction, that number just keeps growing. I think the latest Gartner number is 11, but it's just that number is growing by the day for lots of reasons. So what kind of access do you have to those people? And then really desire. What is the desire of the customer to solve their problem? Customers have lots of projects they can take on, and some of them don't have anything to do with your products or services, but they're evaluating the best use of their resources, people, dollars, time. And what is their level of desire to really follow the buyer's journey all the way through to closure? And then another example is desire of the account-based team. So, does the account team that's going to go after this opportunity that's probably going to take months, maybe in some cases years, are they willing to put in the time and the energy to see it all the way through, even when it's messy and it's not following a typical sales process and it seems like you're going backwards? What is their commitment? And so those are just a couple of the things that I have on my scorecard, but I would encourage companies to create their own.
That is such a great list there. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I'm actually going to jump over really quickly to ask Gretchen Gordon a question about hiring SDRs, but we're joined also by Nancy Narden with that terrifying graphic behind you, which you'll explain later, I hope. But to Gretchen, and this is a question I don't think any of us have not heard recently, which is, what are the characteristics that I need to look for in hiring a new SDRs? And this comes from Jonathan. Gretchen, help Jonathan out here.
Okay, great, thanks. And great question, Jonathan. So I think there's this fallacy that there's a cookie cutter, that you can hire, people who are like this, and they're going to be perfect in your scenario. And even if they've had history as an SDR someplace else, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be successful, because you really have to think about, I think about it 4 different elements. Number 1, what are the behaviors that you're looking for? And SDRs might come in lots of different categories. It might be inbound only, might be outbound, might be a combination, might have to go further in the sales process. So you have to think about, what are the behaviors that you want this person to execute? What are the attitudes that are going to enable them to be successful? Is it, is it pounding out phone calls? Is it a hard sell? Is it that kind of thing? So you have to think about it that way. Just assuming that they have, or projecting onto them that they have certain attributes because the way they conduct themselves in an interview is not going to be effective. Third category is skills. So specific skills. And sometimes we're hiring SDRs that don't have sales background per se. So think about the skills that can transfer. So think about their history. What have they done in the past? What can they demonstrate they've done in the past that would transfer nicely from a skill perspective? And then the final one that I don't think you want to leave out is the environment. How is your environment, and be honest about it. What does your environment entail? Is it a micromanaged environment? Is it you kind of just expect everybody to do what they're supposed to do so they're not closely managed? Take into account the different elements of your company environment, your team environment, and also your marketplace environment. And how is that maybe similar or different than maybe what the individuals had to operate in the past. So think about what they have to do well, whom they have to do it with, and how do they need to execute. And again, there's not a cookie cutter for an SDR, but what you're really looking for is a combination of elements.
Yeah, what's their unique recipe?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. Nancy Narden, great to see you. I have a question for you. This is from Siobhan. And Siobhan's question is, how do you best balance technology and people in the B2B sales process, but still maintaining that personal sales connection? And I know Carol alluded to that scary thing behind you, but I actually love that chart that you've created that shows all the different tools, all the different sales tools, right?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it is crazy, and I think I was on mute, but I just wanted to say it's great to see all of you as well. And this has been a fantastic event that everyone has thrown together. I'm so pleased to be part of it. But to answer, this is a crazy landscape, but there is a method to the madness, and it is designed for people to make sense of it because it's got some headings on it. So I won't go into all of that, but just look at it on the Smart Selling Tools website, look for the red headings, and you'll start to, I think, see how to make sense of it. In terms of balancing technology and sales process to really, I think in the end, have a better buyer experience and to be more effective with buyers, it comes down to freeing up and removing the friction points in a salesperson's day so that they can spend more time on the high value activities. Because what's happening right now is we are getting overloaded. I love Dr. Howard Dover's speech that he's been presenting at the Selling Power conferences. And he equates what's happening now to the Dust Bowl, which is that let's see, I guess there's 6 times as many SDRs as there used to be. And each of those SDRs are now making 10 times the number of phone calls that they used to be able to make. And they're making 100 times and sending 100 times the number of emails. So imagine what that's like for a buyer. So the thing I would say don't do with technology is use it just to amp up just throw more at your customer, because that does no good whatsoever. Use it to free up your time on those activities that are sort of sucking the life out of you every day. I'm having to enter things into CRM. I'm trying to get to my manager. I'm trying to update my form. I'm trying to do all this stuff. And yet I don't have time to prepare for this call so I can be the most relevant possible and to act like I really know what I'm talking about and I'm adding value. So I would recommend for people before they get technology is to keep track of, what do I do during my day? Not for gotcha types of things, but just say, hey, I just got sucked away for an hour because somebody needed something or I had to respond, and now I have customers that have gone uncalled. All of this has resulted in a fairly consistent research number, which is that 35% of a sales rep's time is actually spent interacting with a buyer or with a customer or prospect. So what are they doing the other 65% of the time? And what would happen if you move the needle from 35 to say 50%? And this is where I think it gets really interesting. Moving the needle from 35 to 50 is not a 15% increase. It's a 43% increase in time spent selling. That's the growth rate of time spent selling. So if you have $1 million territory and you're hitting that number with only 35% of your time spent selling, would you now be able to sell $1.43 million worth? All things being equal, if you could just eliminate some of those things that are getting in your way so you can spend more time with customers. That's the power of technology. And unfortunately, most organizations aren't quite using technology yet as a strategic advantage. They're still just trying to demand sales reps enter things into CRM and use online meetings, and they've got marketing automation, so they think they're good to go.
Yeah, like I've heard it said sometimes people use technology to just scale more crap
Yes.
But it's really designed to actually make it a little bit more human, not less so. So thank you so
Yes.
much, Nancy, for joining us. I'm not as terrified by that technology graphing back as I might seem. It's just, like you said, buyers are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So we have a doozy of a question next. And actually, we have a couple of a doozies of a question next. And I'm going to direct the first one towards Lori, because we have two questions here that talk really about culture. But this is a question, Lori, that was sent in by Ed. And I think it's a question that a lot of people are asking these days. And that's, how can employers cultivate the environments that are conducive to getting more women in sales? Job descriptions, culture, organization enhancements. What is a list of tips that could help these organizations? Did we lose Lori? There you are. Lori?
Yeah, it looks like she's frozen.
Uh-oh. I hope she's not frozen.
There she goes.
There she is.
Oh,
Yep.
we got you unfrozen, Lori, but come off mute.
Here we are.
There you are. Did you
No,
hear the
that my
question?
screen froze. Anybody else having that issue? Is that just me?
Not here.
Oh, well, great. Yeah, I'd love to tackle this answer with Lauren. In fact, I'm going to see her later this week. So Lauren, we have another question for you, but I just want to say it's not a simple answer, and it takes a number of different things. And one of the things you've spoken up about, Lauren, that I love is that women need to speak up before they feel like they're ready in terms of an opportunity. And our male allies need to help support women to do this. And it doesn't happen by magic or by osmosis. If so, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now, with so few women in sales leadership roles,
Right.
and not as many women in sales roles that
Right.
would normally happen. So what are your thoughts, Lauren?
We've seen a couple things. So there's two levels, right? Getting our ladies in sales into leadership, and getting more ladies into sales. So I work on that first one a lot with Girls Club. And one of the things that blew me
Yeah, I
away.
got some feedback here.
Okay. One of the things that blew me away that I learned this last year was about how women don't raise their hands as quickly as men do. And that there's sometimes a fear or a confidence block, but it really comes down to, I'm not going to go in for it unless I think I can do it perfectly. So we've got to help quash that perfectionism. And a really quick action that we can take to do that is pushing the button of encouragement. So if you have women sellers on your team, they have not likely spoken up and said, I'm interested in getting into management and leadership. I think I'd be great at it. Your male sellers may have done so, right? And so for us to just take a moment and go to the ladies on the team and say, I think you have a lot of amazing strengths. Have you thought about leadership? Sometimes that's all it takes, folks. And then boom, she takes off like a rocket. If we're looking at the lower level of getting ladies into sales, Lori, I know you speak on this all the time. One of the fastest tips is just go to where the women are, right? Like you're going to have to change your recruiting a little bit, including job descriptions, to attract women into sales. Yeah. But still, there's a little bit of that. I need to go out and touch and encourage somebody to come in, because we tend to not go for something if there's a lot of risk in it of failing any one of the 22 points in your job description.
Right. It's an unconventional hire. It's in some cases. And another thing I heard Gretchen, I think it was Gretchen talking about earlier, maybe Danita, in the talk about hiring and onboarding, was about, we don't need to hire people that have technical knowledge necessarily in a sales role. And that's been limiting a lot of women over the years. It's excluded a lot of women.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so very true. Yeah. And there's also studies, interestingly enough, about language we're using in job descriptions. So if we can take the candidate must have these 10 attributes and move it down to 5, you'll see more women apply. But then apparently there's also language that turns some women off, like you're going to come out and crush quota, and some of that kind of war and sports language that we've all used in sales. Even all of my leading ladies here today, we've all used this language in sales. But it worked for us, and it's turning off other women. right? Whereas their strengths are building more of the relationships and working long term and caring for customers. And what do you think about that, Lori?
And get rid of the bullet points in those job ads. We'll talk more about, we have a lot to say about that. We can spend the whole time doing that. Carol, did we use up Lauren's time, or does Lauren have time still?
We did, but we actually have another question for Lauren as well. And I think it is in relation to what we're talking about in these job descriptions and so forth, is how do we build and create a culture of teamwork and cooperation, especially if you're someone new who's joining an organization and a lot of your team is remote. You don't have that one-to-one. How do you get that kind of culture going?
It's more and more prevalent, which is exciting. And I will tell you, I do that personally. My Factor 8 and Girls Club team, we're all in different cities. So God bless Zoom. I've got lists of quick tactical tips to take away. That's how I roll. So number one, if you're coming in new and inheriting this team, first thing on the docket is make sure you've got one-on-one time with each of those people where you're going to talk about them as a human, them as an employee, their goals, their aspirations, where they are, what wakes them up in the morning, what sucks about their job that you can help with. People stay in companies, right, because they join a company but quit their boss. So we need to help them engage and attach to you as the leader first. Then next, I'm going to say, here's a whole bunch of things we can do to help them engage and attach to each other and build that teamwork. Well, one of the first things we can do is open up some sort of a chat channel, whether it's Hangouts or Slack or whatever. When my team gets to trash talk and send stupid gifts to each other all day long, like, that's team building. That works. I don't know where they find the time to find the perfect meme, but they do. But that's important, right? We've got to have silly and fun. So even if you are remote, find ways to do silly team building whatevers at the front end of a meeting, or Fabulous Fridays, or Trash Talk Tuesdays, or whatever it may be. And if you can find a way to bring people face to face, you will bond faster. It's worth the ROI to do a travel at least once a year when you get them together. 2 other quick tips that I've used in the past when taking over a new team, especially when I was new from the outside, and let's be honest, a bit overemployed, I made team go-to sheets. Hey, so-and-so's really great at figuring out CRM. This guy can crack into any Fortune 1000. Have an issue that you need somebody to proofread? Go to her. So everybody pulls out their strengths and puts them on a form so you know who to go to. That not only makes me feel great about my strength as a leader, it helps bond the team together and help the team work cross-functionally, which is the next tip. Build some cross-functional projects, even if they're silly projects, but on purpose. Get people from the team who don't normally work together, working together on something. 2 last tips. Some sort of an ambition or a celebration or some sort of a system, even when you're remote, can work beautifully. It's not just about the monitors in a call center, right? That can be on everybody's desktop. People love that working remotely. I was just at their conference and they had huge fans. And then finally, I did something with my remote team last year that made an amazing difference, and it was called strength sharing. We all got together to talk about what we were going to work on in the next year for our professional development. So this is me who sells training, trying to walk the walk, folks, professional development. And everybody said, hey, I've got a gap here, and here's what I'm going to be working on. And then the rest of the team came back, and their job was to share that person's strengths that they would use to help overcome the gap. So in doing this, we role modeled vulnerability with the team, authenticity, and really that courage to talk about we're not all perfect, and it's okay if we know that, because that bonds us as a team and a family. But what happened when the team came back together to share strengths, it wasn't strength sharing, it was like a strength shower. It went like 3x over the time budget. Everybody cried. Like, you know, my 6-foot guy, bald guy was like, can't believe you guys think that about me. And everything we didn't get to in our team meeting didn't matter anymore because the team had bonded and they were going to go to the wall for each other. Wow. So a couple quick tips that I've seen work. It's difficult, but there are ways around it.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, at our Rev It Up that we just held last week.
Which was awesome.
Oh, thank you. What we heard in the audience about what was most important when we were talking about coaching, vulnerability was one of the top things of the men and women in the audience. It was really awesome.
Yeah.
Carol, can I go to Misha?
Yep, and then we have our lightning round.
Okay, Carol runs things here. I just want everybody to know. She's keeping me in line. Misha, so Zach asked a question. He wanted to know, how quickly can you tell if a new hire isn't a fit?
Yeah, so if you have a good sales enablement person in place, you can tell by the end of the first day. It's pretty fast. And if you talk to anybody, like, we get really good at it. Now, from there, there's 3 things that we're looking for. What we're looking for is, yes, this is a great fit. 2, like, that's on one side. On the other side is, no, this is a horrible fit. Get them out before somebody gets sued. That's the other side. And then the third side is the, yes, they could be a good fit with the right amount of coaching for specific skills. And then what we're looking for is, what are the specific skills that we're looking for? I think one of the things that's really important is that we look at what's the data that we're actually applying to confirm that this is a good hire or a bad hire. And that should connect, and this is the thing that so few companies do, that should connect to the hiring profile, right? So if we're hiring for set skills and we're hiring for set personality traits as well, are we confirming that through onboarding to make sure that their hiring profile is still correct? And then giving us an area to go back to give them some coaching or correction as needed, right? So making sure that we've got the data, making sure that we're connecting it back to the hiring profile, and then looping it back around.
Great, thank you.
All right, that means it's lightning round time, folks. And I love this question that we chose because it's the promise of the whole Sales Growth Summit. Jenny asked, I work for a hyper growth company, and I'm taking on a sales team from a typical call center mentality to become true sales professionals. What can I do in the next 90 days to quickly and effectively upskill my team for maximum impact? So, my speakers, we have 30 seconds to answer, or less if you can. And Lori, who do we want to start with? How about you, Lori?
How about me?
Yeah.
It's easier to go first because somebody didn't take your answer.
There she goes.
No. Let's pick on Gretchen.
Okay, I would to really ramp things up, I would work with the whole team and get everybody's best questions that they ask customers, and really get our hands dirty with doing kind of practice sessions. What are our best questions? What are our toughest questions? And get everybody focused on the customer. A bit about what we talked about earlier, making sure that we're not just, what Amy was talking about, not just spewing info, but get the team to develop better, more robust questions, and get the team to help each other in how do you work through difficult situations. Okay.
Amy Franco, you're up.
So if I'm in her shoes and I have this team that I need to upskill, and I'm high growth, fast growth, I would want to make sure that the team knows what those growth goals are out of the gate. What's the vision of the CEO? Why are we doing this? Really getting them on board with the fact that we are fast growth, and there are some things we're going to need to sprint to in order to do that. That's the first thing that I would do. The second thing I would do is some kind of assessment. Whether it's, and I don't live in the assessment space, but I know Gretchen, Lori, a few of others of you do. I'd be doing some kind of assessment on the team, whether it's some kind of sales skills assessment, strength finders, whatever that looks like. I would want a handle on the strengths of my team so that I can work to those strengths. Those are probably the 2 places I would start.
Okay.
How about Lauren Bailey? You've done this.
I do a lot, but look, Alice had her hand up and she beat me to it. So I'll go right after Alice.
All right, Alice, you're up.
I would help them change their mindset. What everybody else said, of course, but change their mindset about what they do and why they do it, and about the customer, so that they can get scaled up and start to look at this as, we're problem solvers, we're helpers, and these customers can't wait to talk to us because we know them and we understand them, and we're going to help them solve the problem.
Alice, with 7 seconds to spare.
Oh, nailed it.
Means you're on the hot seat.
Woo! Am I good next?
Oh, you're good next.
All right. When somebody talks about switching from a call center mentality, what I hear there is, we've been treating these people low level. We've been metrics and activity based only. We're probably generating appointments and not generating quality leads or able to sell down the rest of the pipeline. Okay. So if we're going to make those changes, a few quick tips. First and foremost, we got to start getting out of the world of activity and into the world of KPIs. Go deep on this in the book, Cracking the Sales Management Code. But brand new reps and managers know everything about dials and revenue and just absolutely blank in between. So what are the key to the KPIs, key KPIs to your growth? Second thing is set some milestones realistically. It is a culture change, a mindset change. Thank you, Alice. I'm pointing down in the Brady Bunch on the Zoom. Thank you, Alice. It's a mindset change, and we know that it's going to take time. And you'll save your sanity by saying, okay, listen, in this one, by quarter, here's what we can actually achieve. And my third suggestion is get some outside help, especially around this professional development skills. Reps aren't going to know how to go from I'm selling at this level down here suddenly to a strategic, focused, value-based, higher level person sale. And even if you as the leader have the aptitude to teach them, the external credibility is going to make a big difference in getting them there.
Lauren, you say such great stuff. It's hard for me to interrupt you, but
I'm way over time.
I'm banning you on the timer right now. All right. Who's next? Shall we go to Nancy?
Sure.
All right.
So, of course, I'm going to answer with something to do with technology. This is so great because we all have our specialties and everything is important, but I look at it from technology perspective. I'd say get two types of technology. One is something that reps can do video practice, and they can comment and they can see others' videos and understand what good looks like. And the second one I would do is I would get some sort of conversation intelligence tool so that you can know what reps are saying on these calls and you can coach them. Some of them you can even coach in real time while they're on the call using kind of a whisper technology. But you can also run some really great analytics to see, to Lauren's point about KPIs, what does the conversation look like that leads to the best types of appointments, not just the most appointments, but the best types of appointments. So those are the two things that I would do, is get those two technologies.
Thank you, Nancy. Great tie into also to what Lauren was talking about. So let's see, we have Lisa Magnuson, 30 seconds on the clock.
All right. Okay. My best advice, which kind of incorporates some of the things that everybody's mentioned, is to put together a playbook so that everybody has the plays, has the book. It can include video. But I'm going to leave this with a quote from Dan Zamudio. He's the founder and CEO of Playbox. And he says, the overarching sales enablement goal from a change management perspective is to shift behavior from everybody doing their own thing to everyone doing the best thing. And a playbook does that for you.
Great way to end it, Lisa. Thank you. All right, Misha or Lori, who wants to go next? Misha.
I'm going to pass because my internet's a little unstable here. So let me pass to Misha.
Okay, so I love this. It's a complex thing, but with rapid growth, probably what I would dig into that hasn't been mentioned has to do with sales process and sales methodology. Specifically focusing on what is the exit criteria, not just on the seller side, but on the buyer side. So what is the seller doing, but also what is the buyer doing before we move from one sales stage to the next. Sales process being what we do, sales methodology being how we do it. So really using that sales methodology to help the reps understand that shift of mindset of really focusing on the buyer, focusing on the challenges, focusing on everything else before we start talking about this button is red and that button is green. Right? So really, really understanding how to sell to a human being versus just how to say the right things.
Thank you so much for that reminder. That reminds me of my favorite t-shirt that I have, that it's not about me upside down. We need that constant reminder. Yep. So here's my 30 seconds, and I'm going to time myself because Alice, loved what you said about mindset. Amy, what you said about growth goals. Lauren, what you said about how we're measuring, and Lisa with playbooks and making it all about the person, and Nancy using video to interview. Here's my tip. Is that when you want some people to do something in a short amount of time, it's going to require challenging them and maybe stepping outside of their comfort zones. Company goals are important. Personal, meaningful goals that are aligned to those company goals is your rocket fuel. so that no matter what you ask them to do in those 90 days, they're going to be willing to do it because it's something meaningful for them. So take that step with your team. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you, ladies, all for joining me today, both on the summit, for the promotion of it, for these awesome answers that you've given to all of our attendees. And if you're listening in, if you're a salesperson or a manager, make sure you tune in tomorrow to hear from sales experts on everything from asking great discovery questions to discussing price and closing, even how to take control of your calendar. And leaders, if you found some value from today's sessions, invite your team for tomorrow. Until then, everybody, thank you.